Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Monday, November 3rd, 2025. Larry Johnson joins us in just a moment. Can NATO take on Russia? Well, it doesn't seem to make any sense, but why are they saying it? But first, this. History tells us every market eventually falls. Currencies collapse. And look at where we are now. 37 trillion in national debt. Stocks at record highs defying gravity. So what happens next? Groceries, gas, housing, everything's going up. And this dollar, it buys less every day. When the system breaks, your stocks won't save you and your dollars won't either. But one thing will: gold. I've said it on my show for years. Gold survives collapse. Central bankers know this and billionaires know it. That's why they're buying more. Is it too late to buy, or is it just the right time? Call my friends at Lear Capital to find out. Ask questions, get the free information. There's no pressure, and that's why I buy my gold and silver from Lear. And right now, you can get up to $20,000 in bonus metals with a qualified purchase. Call 800-511-4620 or go to LearJudgeNap.com today. Larry Johnson, welcome here, my dear friend. Before I talk to you, or we talk about NATO and Russia, a couple of different questions. The president is about to welcome al-Jawlani in the Oval Office. I mean, do you think that your former colleagues at the Central Intelligence Agency have briefed him on this guy's background?
Let's call it political schizophrenia. So on the one hand, we spent the last 25 years fighting so-called war on terror. And the perpetrators of those, the terrorist attacks on 9/11 were linked to Sunni jihadists, Sunni extremists. They resonate with like the Wahhabi sect out of Saudi Arabia, Deobandis out of Pakistan. So here's al-Jawlani, who was, he was a senior member in ISIS, and then split off with ISIS, formed other groups like al-Nusra, was involved with al-Nusra, and then created his own Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS. Now, at some point in that process, he became entwined with the CIA, British MI6. He became a Western asset. But, it's not the first time the West has gotten into bed with radical Islamists. We did it during the Afghanistan war in the 1980s, backing extremists that were attacking the Soviets. We then continued that support in, say, 1999 in the Second Chechen War, again, Western-backed, supplied radical jihadists. And these jihadists are, they believe that they've got the truth, that Shia Muslims are apostates, Christians can be killed. And Jawlani comes to this meeting in Washington with blood on his hands, American blood. And we had a $10 million reward on his head. But never mind, because we have no actual moral convictions in this country.
This will goad you even more. The president yesterday on al-Jawlani, cut number 6.
Are you meeting with the Syrian president at the White House? Or did you invite him? The Syrian president? The Syrian president?
He may be coming. I don't know. I mean, he's working very hard. We took sanctions off of Syria to give them a chance at survival. And I hear he's doing a very good job.
I guess he has been briefed by briefers who are saying he's still doing a very good job. Isn't he slaughtering Christians in the streets?
Well, the members of his outfit, HTS, and other affiliated Sunni groups, they're killing Christians, they're killing Alawites, and they're killing Shia Muslims. So, he's not a unifier. He's not bringing the country together. He's advocating for one particular group. And now he's got the advantage that, he's got Western backing. Now, look, that said, he's also been to Moscow and has met with President Putin. Now, Putin hasn't, gone through the hypocrisy thing on this. I mean, they recognize Jelani for what he is. But what's interesting about that is when Jelani took over a year ago, the West was just howling with glee. This is, the Russians have been defeated. Iran's been defeated. Now here we are a year later, and Jelani's going to Putin saying, please stay. Don't go away.
Right. Right.
Maintain your air base, maintain your naval base. We want you. And part of the reason he wants them is to help deal with Israel.
Wow. With respect to Israel, what is your understanding of the state of affairs on the ground in Gaza? Is the IDF still killing people? Are food and medical supplies getting through? Is Hamas being rearmed?
Yes, and yes. So, look, I had a former special operations, U.S. special operations guy, officer, send me some analysis. This man lives actually in Portland, Oregon. The relevance of Portland, Oregon is if you take this city, the territory that's called Portland, Oregon, that's a little bit larger than Gaza, okay? To put this in perspective so Americans understand how small Gaza is. And yet, here we are 2 years after the October 7th attacks. Israel mobilized 300,000 soldiers. And basically, think of it this way, 300,000 Israeli soldiers couldn't conquer Portland, Oregon. All right? Mm-hmm. Put that at, think about that for a minute. So Israel, despite its routine murder of civilians, has still been unable to disarm, defeat Hamas. And it's not just Hamas. Remember, there are at least 13 other Palestinian groups, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Abu Nidal group. So Israel has not been able to bring them under thumb, but it has inflicted, a horrific price on the human beings in that area.
Switching over to the topic at hand, do the preeminent European leaders, Prime Minister Starmer, President Macron, Chancellor Merz, think that NATO is a match for Russia militarily?
I don't know privately what they think. All I can go on is publicly what they've said. And yes, right. They absolutely, they think that the combined strength of NATO outweighs Russia's capabilities. And you go, you remember that picture where those three were on a train, and there was a suggestion that there was some illegal substances, maybe that alter one's judgment, and you may have a hallucinatory effect being ingested. I think they may be back at it because let's just go down the list. Russia produces more tanks in a year than all three of those combined in terms of tanks. In fact, I'm not even sure they have active programs to build tanks. Russia's got at least 5 different variants of hypersonic missiles that travel at Mach 6 and above and can be maneuvered. They don't have
what is Mach 6?
It's over 5,000 miles per hour.
Wow. Okay.
So again, not one of those major European members of NATO have a hypersonic missile. The size of their military is deficient. Again, you put Germany, France, England together, it still doesn't. It's not even. It's roughly about maybe 50% of what Russia has in the field right now in Ukraine. So this is one of those examples of these guys looking in the mirror, sitting around. It's like a bunch of old high school athletes who are now in their 60s. They're sitting around talking about how well they played football and thinking they could still play, except they're fat, they're out of shape, and they've got various physical ailments. That's Europe. That's NATO. NATO is a spent force that just doesn't know it.
You and I emailed over the weekend comments by this Italian admiral,
right,
who is now the chair of NATO's military committee. Now, before we even get into what he said, which I think is absurd, I think you'll agree with me, what does the chair of NATO's military committee mean?
I'm not sure. I mean, I've called it a jobs program for white guys. NATO is this big bureaucracy that gives people, officers a chance to say that they've got some important job, but they're not actually a strategic body, and they don't have any command authority over troops. So let's call it's an honorific. You get to say, hey, I was in charge of this grand committee. What'd they do? Well, we talked, we had meetings.
Well, he claimed that NATO was stronger than Russia, that NATO will stand with Ukraine, and that NATO plus Ukraine equals peace. How crazy can you? You also claim that the Russians have lost 1 million troops, which is the second time you and I have heard this in a week. The first time we rebuked the person who said it.
Yeah, more than 1 million, the Western sources are saying. And look, it's just simply do the math. So can we point to any category of weapon system in which NATO has an advantage over Russia? The answer to that is no. Mark Rutte, the head of NATO, the Secretary General, said 6 months ago that Russia produces more artillery shells in 3 months than NATO, including the United States combined, can produce in a year. So, Russia outpaces all of the NATO countries combined in the production of brand new tanks. They've got the hypersonic missiles I referred to. They've now fielded two new missiles, or one for underwater like a torpedo, one above ground, the Berezhnik and the Poseidon. Last year, they presented an intermediate range ballistic missile, the Oreshnik. Now, what makes the Berezhnik and the Poseidon so groundbreaking is that they are powered by an internal nuclear reactor, a miniature nuclear reactor. But that means you no longer can classify it as either intercontinental, intermediate range, short range, because it does it all. It's not confined to how much fuel you can put into a tank and how long that fuel can burn. A nuclear reactor is potentially giving you unlimited time. So, and there are a lot of Western analysts that are poo-pooing, oh, this means nothing. This is just a bunch of Russian hype. Good luck with that, guys, because the fact of the matter, they've not seen any of these systems in operation yet, or if they had, they're keeping it in classified channels. But again, you can't point to a single technological area in which the West has an advantage or superiority over Russia, including the use of drones. I mean, we haven't even talked about that. The West relies on these very expensive systems like the MQ-9 Reaper, which costs $35 million a piece. And as we saw with the Houthis, with the Operation Prosperity Guardian in March of this year, over a 7-week period, the Houthis were shooting down one a week. And so at the end of 7 weeks, the United States was out almost $250,000 of drones. And then Donald Trump declared victory and said, no, those Houthis, they've capitulated. We're leaving, guys. Come on, let's go.
Why would this admiral be saying this stuff? Well, first of all, does NATO have a navy?
Yes. Well, it's not a NATO navy. You have the respective navies of Italy, Germany, UK. If UK can get any of its ships out of harbor. But NATO provides a coordinating command structure in the event that there is a war and NATO tries to operate together. They do have NATO naval exercises.
And what would have provoked
Oh, this
A
guy?
senior official in NATO to be making the comments that animated you and me over the weekend.
Yeah, the collapse of the Ukrainian/NATO force that's in Ukraine, and with this happening right now, this is a way to try to boost morale by saying, no, it's not as bad as it looks. It's like that scene. Leslie Nielsen, the actor, he was in that movie Police Story, and there's Lieutenant Frank Drebin, and there's a scene where a car crashes into this explosives factory. Bombs are going off. There's explosions and fire and smoke and noise. And he's going, nothing to see here. Move along. Nothing to see here. That's this admiral. Nothing to see. Oh, we're great, man. We are so strong. We got those Russians right where we want them. And, Russia is just ignoring these guys for right now. The only thing that would be, if you will, a game changer from Russia's side in terms of changing how they deal with the West would be if Trump actually allows the introduction of Tomahawk missiles. If that happens, then we're likely to see an expansion of Russian attacks outside of Ukraine.
So where is there more fear? In the West, a fear of Oreshniks, or in Russia, a fear of Tomahawks?
The Russians aren't afraid of Tomahawks. The Russian, and this is one of the things I heard frequently in my conversations with with 28 different people, government officials, political figures, military personnel, generals. The problem is a Tomahawk can carry a nuclear weapon, and Russia does not have the ability to see through the missile to know whether or not it's carrying a nuke. So Russia is going to have to assume it is a nuclear weapon. Now, what's alarming is the conversations in the West from several, prominent people, including, Lindsey Graham and Jack Keane, where they claim that Russia's actually weak, Russia's afraid, and Russia's just talking tough because there's nothing that they can do about this. Well, there's actually a lot that Russia can do about it. And if they're put in the situation where they have to assume that those Tomahawk missiles that are actually deployed, they'll have to assume that they are carrying nuclear warheads, and they will act to preempt that. And that preemption would include everything up to the use of the Oreshnik missile on military bases in Europe, in Poland, in Romania, in Germany, potentially in the UK. If a Tomahawk was actually launched and struck Moscow, cause significant damage to the Kremlin, you cannot take off the table that Russia would retaliate by hitting Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Then we're into a whole nother ball game. So this is serious, but the Russians aren't afraid of it. I mean, just to the opposite of that, they were like, you better not do it because we're not going to put up with it. It was more that attitude.
When you and I first met happily a long time ago, before we began our long collaboration, you were on Fox News. Same with Scott Ritter. Now, of course, you're not on Fox. Scott would never be on Fox. I'm not on Fox. We're in the alternative media where we reach a huge, huge audience. Apparently, we have gotten under some people's skin, Larry. Now, without mentioning you or me or Scott by name, but mentioning Tucker Carlson, our other colleague, who I should have mentioned in this group, watch Mark Levin, somebody I rarely put on, but I got to raise your blood pressure a little bit. Watch Mark Levin before the Russian-Jewish coalition over the weekend.
And I just want the anti-American, anti-Israel, anti-West crowd to understand something. You're going to have to come through me and millions of people just like me, and you're not going to make it. You think your stupid little podcast, or your stupid little subscription program or your little TV show, or maybe you have a little radio show, is going to change the world like hell it is, not if I and everybody else have something to say about it.
I said Russian. It was Republican-Jewish coalition. Obviously, they're not happy when we point out that none of us is anti-Semitic, but Zionism is destroying freedom and life.
Yeah. Well, a little fat bald guy says he's going to stop me. Good luck with that. It's unfortunate that Levin is such a hateful, nasty little man.
Yes.
But it is, he's always screaming and yelling. And people forget that when Donald Trump first showed up on scene, man, Levin was doing everything he could to destroy Donald Trump. Hated Donald Trump. Now he claims he's a big Trump supporter. Again, this to conflate being anti-American just because you despise Zionism, which is Zionism is not Judaism. Zionism is a completely different beast, and we can line up lots of Jewish Americans or people who profess Judaism as the religion around the world that reject Zionism. The heart and soul of Zionism is basically racial supremacy.
Correct.
And there's no place if you believe in a deity, and that deity, and the foundation of your belief is that we are better. This deity loves a particular group of people more than other people, prefers one group of people over all other people. That's crazy because that's not a deity worth worshiping or obeying or following. So that's the problem Zionism has for itself. It's this ethno-supremacy that ends up being translated into murder, rape, and torture. Which
you answered what Levin said with such calmness, thoughtfulness, and personal courage. If Levin answered what you just said, it would be filled with venom and hatred and threats.
Yeah, and it is this foundation of hatred. I said this earlier today. If you go back to the foundational book in the Old Testament, the Genesis, if there are those who believe this was written, dictated to the early Jewish scholars by God. But if you go to the story of Cain and Abel, where Cain kills Abel, and
his brother,
not only his brother, but in this you find that Cain is one who kills. He murders animals. He slaughters animals and offers blood sacrifice. Abel is a farmer. He produces fruits, vegetables. And yet God actually accepts the offering of Cain and rejects the offering of Abel. So that this God that's presented there in the Old Testament is a God of bloodlust, not a God that celebrates productivity, things that grow, that doesn't involve shedding blood. And so that whole mentality of shedding blood, unfortunately, is embraced not just by the Zionists, but we're seeing, we got Donald Trump doing it. He's enjoying killing guys and gals maybe that are in boats that he insists are drug traffickers without one shred of proof. And you go back to your days as a judge, you would not allow a single law enforcement officer to survive a trial that was based upon them saying, I thought the guy looked suspicious, so I shot him.
I killed him, right? Yeah. You're 100% correct. I got to play one more for you. This is the guy that Max Blumenthal chased through the halls of Congress. Now, when you see the size of him, I don't know how Max didn't catch him, but Max was carrying a heavy camera with him. Congressman Randy Fine saying Tucker Carlson's the most dangerous person in America. This will turn your stomach. Cut number 7.
If I was talking to my father at 8:59 p.m. at night, he would say, Randy, I gotta go. Tucker Carlson's gonna be on. But make no mistake, today, Tucker Carlson is the most dangerous anti-Semite in America. He has chosen to take on the mantle of leader of a modern-day Hitler Youth, to broadcast and feature those who celebrate the Nazis, those who call for the extermination of Israel, to defend Hamas, to even criticize President Trump for stopping Iran's nuclear ambitions. Friends, make no mistake, Tucker is not MAGA.
Yeah, despicable. What a despicable human being. You know, but it's this kind of, look, it's this kind of fanaticism from the likes of a Randy Fine and a Mark Levin. That is, hey, keep it up, guys. You know, it reminds me of a comment. I interviewed the head of the Communist Party in Russia. And he's he's older than me, pretty rough, he's very forceful. And afterwards, I was getting ready to interview another gentleman let's call him an advisor to Putin. And I said, what did you think of Mr. Zhuganov, the head of the Communist Party? And he goes, we're so happy that he is head of the Communist Party. So what you can say is we're so happy that Randy Fine and Mark Levin are the face of Zionists in America, because it's not a very attractive or appealing face. And this kind of vicious, vile hatred directed at Tucker. Because if you listen to Tucker and actually watch his various interviews, he's the exact opposite. He's not calling for demonizing a group of people. He actually believes that you hold individuals accountable for their individual acts. And he's been very emphatic about, you don't demonize Judaism, you don't demonize Jews. So, it's just, it is a shame that Randy Fine is saying what he's saying, but, given his obvious challenge with resisting donuts, I think he'd be better off focusing on a healthy lifestyle instead of doing such venom.
I suppose it's just a matter of time before these creeps come after us. Every knock's a boost.
Yeah,
Larry, thanks very much. Thanks for your time. We went a little bit longer than we usually do. It's always a pleasure to chat with you, and I'll see you Friday with the youngster.
Yeah, I'll be there. Thanks, Judge.
Thank you, my dear friend. All the best. And coming up at 1:00 this afternoon, Professor Francisco Rodriguez, what is really happening in Venezuela and why does the United States threaten to conquer it? And at 2:00, responding to and commenting on Professor Rodriguez, our old pal Kyle Anzalone, Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.